If you think you've lost everything, sometimes life hides miracles in the unlikeliest places. Stay with me till the end, because what this single dad found inside an old, creaking barn changed everything. A broken bar. Ethan Carter had always believed he'd been born with bad luck stitched into his skin. The thread had started unraveling the day cancer stole his wife, Mia, away from him. She'd been his North Star, his best friend, the only person who knew how to calm the storms that often raged in his chest. Now, 3 years later, the storms had become hurricanes. Bills piled up on the dusty kitchen table of the tiny rental house he shared with his 8-year-old son, Noah. Every overdue notice felt like a knife, every bounced check a reminder that he was failing at the only job he had left, being a good dad. Ethan hadn't always been like this. Once upon a time, he dreamed of running a small bread and breakfast with Mia, a place where guests could wake up to the smell of fresh bread and laughter echoing across the fields. They'd even talked about restoring an old farmhouse, somewhere off the beaten path, but after she died, the dream died with her, or so he'd thought. Then came the barn. It was almost midnight when Ethan first saw the listing, a real estate website he couldn't remember bookmarking. Half drunk on stale beer and his own desperation, the property was a few miles outside town, an abandoned barn on 7 acres, listed for just $38,000. To most, it was a rotting heap of timber, leaning like a drunken sailor. To Ethan, it was every last penny of his savings. Noah was asleep on the couch, hugging his stuffed dinosaur so tight its seams were splitting. Ethan glanced at him, then back at the photo of the barn. A voice, soft but insistent, rose from somewhere deep inside. This could be it, the place where he could finally breathe again, the place where just maybe Noah could run through fields instead of parking lots, fall asleep to the sound of crickets instead of car horns. By dawn, that decision was made. He transferred the money, sight unseen, inspection waived all of it. He told himself he was crazy. He told himself Mia would have laughed him out of the house. But when Noah woke up that morning and saw his dad, eyes blurry but strangely alive, the boy's grin said it all. They were in this together. They arrived at the property on a drizzly March afternoon. The wind howled across the empty fields, carrying the scent of wet earth and old dreams. The barn stood at the end of a gravel path, half swallowed by tall grass and ivy that curled around its sagging beams like greedy fingers. Noah jumped out of the pickup truck first, his sneakers splashing in the mud. Ethan followed, heart hammering against his ribs. Up close, the barn looked even worse than the photos. Broken windows like empty eye sockets, door hanging from a single hinge, the faded red paint flaking off in big, sad chunks. "Dad, it looks spooky," Noah shouted, but he was smiling at the first real smile Ethan had seen in weeks. Yeah, it does, buddy. Let's see what we're working with." Ethan forced a laugh. Inside, the voice of doubt was screaming, "You just blew your last dollar on a haunted shack." They pushed the door open together. It creaked, protesting decades of silence. Dust and the musty scent of rotting wood greeted them like an old ghost. A single shaft of sunlight cut through a hole in the roof, spotlighting the mess inside, piles of discarded furniture, rusted tools, broken crates. But then Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Look," he whispered, pointing toward the far corner. Ethan squinted. At first, he thought it was just shadows dancing. The barn was full of strange shapes. But then he heard it, a faint, high-pitched squeak, followed by a soft rustling. He stepped closer, boots crunching over straw and broken glass. There, huddled in a nest of old blankets and straw, were 3 tiny eyes peeking back at him, then another pair, and another. Kittens, not just 1 or 2, but an entire litter, barely weeks old, mewling and trembling under the broken rafters. Ethan dropped to his knees. One of the braver kittens, a tiny calico with the patch over her eye, stumbled forward and batted at his bootlace. For a moment, the barn didn't feel so empty anymore. Noah knelt beside him, eyes wide. "Can we keep them, Dad, please?" Ethan opened his mouth to say no. They barely had enough to feed themselves. But the words caught in his throat. Mia would have said yes. She'd always taken in strays, told him that helping something smaller than you was the purest kind of love. "Yeah, bud," he whispered. "Yeah, we'll keep them." They spent the next few days cleaning out the barn, discovering more than just kittens. Hidden behind a false wall, Ethan found a rusted lockbox. Inside were old letters and faded photos. A couple who dawned the barn generations ago, their handwriting looping in romantic flourishes, speaking of dreams to turn the property into a community orchard, a place for families. Ethan felt a chill then, not from the cold, but from the sense that maybe this barn had been waiting for him all along. That maybe, just maybe, he was meant to finish what they'd started. But dreams were one thing, money was another. He still had no income, no savings. He was about to lose the rental house, and now they had 5 hungry kittens to feed. At night, when Noah was asleep in a sleeping bag beside the kittens, Ethan lay awake on the barn floor, staring up at the holes in the roof, wondering if he'd doomed them both. Then, on a stormy night when the wind rattled the barn walls like bones, Ethan heard something that made his blood run cold. A voice say, not a memory, not a dream, but a real, human voice echoing through the darkness. Hello? Is someone there? He sat up, heart hammering. Noah stirred beside him but didn't wake. The kittens were curled in a ball, purring. Ethan grabbed the rusted crowbar he'd been using to pry boards off the windows and crept toward the door. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the figure of a woman standing at the edge of the field, soaked, shivering, and very much real. She was clutching something to her chest, something that meowed. Please see broken bar, she called, her voice breaking. They said you help strays. Ethan stared at her, thunder rolling overhead. The barn, the kittens, the old letters, and it all collided in his mind like a puzzle snapping together. Maybe this place wasn't just an escape for him and Noah. Maybe it was meant to be a refuge for more than just them. Come in, he said, stepping aside. You're safe here. And in that moment, drenched in rain, surrounded by kittens and a barn that was falling apart, Ethan Carter realized he hadn't lost everything. Not yet. Maybe sometimes the world breaks you open just to let the light back in. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, because what Ethan finds hidden in this old barn will blow your mind. Like this video if you believe in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss how this story unfolds.